Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of The Real Breakdown. Roger back at it here, guys. And yes, we are going to be talking about Ant Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Guys, the start of Phase 5. Man, it's hard to believe that this is, I believe, the 30th film in the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. How crazy is that? But anyways, guys, yeah, let's talk about it, man. So this movie, I've done a trailer reaction review for it. It's on the channel. I did an out of theater reaction. It's on the channel. And now, guys, let's just talk about this film, man, and do my full review. Now, at this point, I have seen the movie twice. If you've watched any of my videos, you know that the first time I went and watched it, it did get interrupted. A fire alarm was pulled in the theater that I was in. I had to step out in the snowy winters here in the Midwest. I ended up not missing that much. So I've seen the film twice, guys. So I feel like I have my pretty full out thoughts on this film. But I will say this: when it comes to the Ant Man movies, they're not necessarily my favorite of the MCU, but they've always been pretty good, pretty funny, and just entertaining. We know that the director Peyton Reed had come out and said, "Hey, our movies have been palate cleansers in the past. I kind of want to make this, more of an Avengers level type of movie." And so I went into this film with those kind of expectations. Kind of walking into the movie theater, I was thinking, "Wow, there's so many rumors, so many things have been, said about this movie. It's gonna be Avengers level. Obviously, it's gonna introduce Kang. Does it end with someone dying? Who's gonna die? Are they gonna introduce the Fantastic Four? Are we gonna see? I mean, people are always saying we're gonna see X-Men, right?" So many things were said, so many things were theorized about this film. As I usually do, I try to check those expectations at the door before I go in to watch the movie. And what can I tell you guys about it? Well, this movie, I think, was pretty great. It was a really good film. I was thoroughly entertained. It was fun. I said this in my out of theater reaction, and I keep saying it. It's funny and it has a lot of heart. And having seen it a second time, guys, I can say that I really enjoy this film. I like it more than the second Ant Man movie. I might like it more than the first Ant Man. But like I said, those aren't like in my top 10 MCU films. But this is a really good film. I like to say that it's a good time at the theater. Now, as far as all those expectations, no, it didn't meet those expectations, right? We didn't see anything crazy. We didn't see Fantastic Four, no X-Men. Also, this idea that see, this is what happens. Kevin Feige comes out and says stuff, and then fans and theorists just take things over. So this idea that Kevin Feige has said that this movie was gonna finally explain why Phase 4 felt as disjointed as it did. It didn't really do that. Which, to be honest, that was my biggest disappointment in it. But that's not to say that this isn't a great film. I think that this movie really went back to that Marvel formula that just works in the MCU. Now, had it gotten stale for a little bit, hey, your typical like hero's journey, and there's some comedy thrown into it, and it's family friendly, and yeah, there's some jokes for the adults too, and there's a good guy and a bad guy, and the good guy wins. Like, yes, it feels formulaic, but to be honest, after Thor: Love and Thunder, after Doctor Strange: Multiverse of Madness, I was so happy that we were back to this type of movie making for Marvel. And maybe that's why I like this movie more than maybe I would have if I didn't feel so burned by Thor: Love and Thunder and Multiverse of Madness. Those are films that I just really did not like, especially like just the tone of the movie. But anyways, I don't want to get into those movies again. Let's talk about this movie a bit more because I did enjoy it. And even though I do feel it was kind of a letdown and as far as like how much it was going to connect and all the theories that were going to come out, that's fine. I still had a great time in it. What were some of the great things about this movie? I have to say that there's two main things that I really take away from this movie that I really enjoy. The first one is Cassie's relationship with Scott Lang. That father-daughter relationship, man, it was one thing in the first Ant-Man movie where it's like a little girl and she's cute and her little cute high squeaky voice, and here obviously she's grown up. We saw in Endgame that when Scott came back, she had grown. They got a new actress, Katherine Newton. I think she did a phenomenal job. Her chemistry with Paul Rudd, and Paul Rudd is great, by the way. Like, I've never been a guy who really has followed Paul Rudd's career. Obviously, I saw him in Clueless, but like, he's just a joy to have on screen, and it's funny to see him interact with Avengers and in his own movies. He's a funny dude. So his chemistry with Katherine Newton, Cassie Lang, was great. I thought that dynamic of the movie, of that father-daughter, wow, it brought so many great elements to the movie. to see her be this like young, aspiring kind of like I want to change the world kind of attitude, it really worked well for her character. And I think that it really worked well in this new world where we're introducing, right, like the younger version of some of these older heroes, right? You got Hawkeye mentoring Haley Steinfeld's character. You have, Yelena being the younger Black Widow, right? So in this new kind of in this new generation of heroes that we're getting, I have to say Cassie Lang's was one that just made more sense. It didn't feel forced, and I loved her character. I loved what she stood for and how she kind of like bounced that off of Paul Rudd and his character as a dad. And seeing Paul Rudd as a dad, I'll tell you what, one of my favorite scenes in this movie is when Kang has Ant Man and Cassie Lang both like in their prison cells, and he's like making the deal with Ant Man, and he's like torturing him. When he finally lets him out, Ant-Man or Scott Lang turns into like dad mode, and he says, "Don't ever touch her again." And to see a funny character get that serious, that's what I love, man. And just seeing him turn into that protective dad was awesome. And I think that's something that like we kind of saw in the first Ant-Man movie, but this one was kind of taken on another level. So I really love that dynamic. I think that their chemistry, their acting together of those two actors felt genuine. Like this, they really felt like a father, a daughter. And also that whole conversation of like, she is kind of used to living on her own because her dad was gone, and him feeling kind of remorseful and like trying to make up for that, like all the birthdays that he missed, right? So all that stuff I thought was great. I really enjoyed Cassie's addition to the team, to the movie, and I think that it just felt like a very wholesome, a very heart. That's the heart of the movie for me. It just felt very genuine, and I really like that. The other aspect of the movie that I really enjoyed was Kang. I think that, Jonathan Majors, obviously we got introduced to him as a variant of Kang in the Loki series, and I really liked him there, and I was very excited to see this Kang, and he did not disappoint. Jonathan Majors put on a great performance as Kang. This version of Kang was ruthless, was more physical, was more serious, was more very different than what we saw in Loki, but I really enjoyed this. It was the perfect change of pace for that character that I needed, and I really liked to see him in his full suit, in using his powers, and to get a bit of that backstory. Now, we'll talk more about Kang and some of the end credit scenes there, but I really enjoyed his presence in the movie. I feel like Jonathan Majors filled those shoes of Kang very well, and gave him the weight and kind of the seriousness to that character that it needed. So I really enjoyed him. Every time he was on screen, I was like on my toes, and I'm like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? What's he gonna do? Like, I did enjoy that a lot. So those were the two main things that I really liked, right? Everything else I felt was done very well. What do I mean by that? So when I say that like this is your typical Marvel fare, I mean that like Marvel tends to do things at a certain level. Like maybe not everything is great, but they're always at least good. So one of the other things that I really liked was the cinematography. I thought that this movie had so many great shots. The shots of Kang sitting on the throne, the shots of like Scott getting huge, and like, or just like the quantum realm, showing the landscape of the quantum realm. I know we'd seen some of the shots in the trailers, but when the old Ant Man, Hank Pym, Michelle Pfeiffer's character, and Wasp are like traversing, flying on that creature, going through the quantum realm, that was just some amazing cinematography, amazing shots. I mean, it kind of took me back to Avatar a little bit. There was just a lot of great camera work and there was a lot of dope moments and dope shots of like, oh, that'd be a cool poster. So I can always appreciate that. I thought the film looked beautiful. I didn't see too many like CGI issues. And I think that this movie was just done very well, which is good to see because I feel like Marvel has dropped the ball on their last few projects. So I'm glad that in this film, there was no aspect of it where I'm like, well, that was horrible, or like, ooh, yeah, they really missed a beat there. Now, the few things that I felt like they could have done better, the few things that kind of left me scratching my head in this movie were definitely the ending, right? So Kang's demise in this movie, the fact that Kang got killed in this, I thought was a little underwhelming, because I don't know, I guess maybe I'd kind of bought into the theory of like this movie's gonna end with someone on the Ant-Man team, like, or on the Pym team, dying. Maybe one or two people, right? Was Hank Pym gonna die? Was Janet Van Dyne gonna die? Was Hope Van Dyne gonna die? Was Paul Rudd's character, Scott Lang himself, gonna die? At the end, nobody died. They all got back home safe, and like Kang was defeated. And I thought that was a little bit like, I don't know, kind of like, all right, I know we want to like throw Ant-Man a bone and be like, hey, here's your Avengers level kind of movie, which I think is really cool. I think it's really cool that Ant-Man got to be the character that introduces Kang, the next big bad. I mean, there's a movie called Avengers Kang Dynasty, so we know Kang is going to be back and play a major role. So I thought it was cool that Ant-Man got that credit, but I also felt like it was kind of cheap that he got defeated in this movie, especially this much more formidable version of him that we got. Could that be that they're just leading us to kind of think that for now, and then later we get an even more formidable version, or he comes back? That could be cool too, but I will say I felt kind of like the ending was, I'm like, all right, well, you just want to make the hero win, right? Now, I didn't hate that, but it did feel kind of cheap. It felt like, okay, so Ant-Man wins and he proves that he is the real Avenger, or like he is a top dog Avenger. And it's like, well, didn't we kind of already know that? He did, after all, like they continue to mention in the movie, he saved the world, right? He wrote a book about it. So I don't feel like he needed that much more credit. I felt like that ending was kind of cheap. I kind of wanted to like see Kang escape and like, but then we're going into like what expectation versus reality, so I can't kind of judge it on that. The other thing was, and this isn't even a gripe, but since I'm remembering, I'm going to mention it now. This movie is a sci-fi movie. I heard people walking out of the theater calling it, oh, this is Marvel's Star Wars, which we had thought was Guardians of the Galaxy, and yeah, that's kind of a space opera, but the Quantum Realm felt like we had a lot of characters that you might find in Star Wars. There were a lot of settings that felt like Star Wars, a lot of creatures, and like a lot of I mean, there's a character that's kind of like, oh, well, that's Chewie basically, that's not a bad thing. I definitely felt like if you're gonna go see this movie, and if you're watching this review, I'm assuming you have already seen this movie. What I noticed was that you could definitely feel that there were some like inspirations from Star Wars. So I mean, that's kind of cool, right? I mean, I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan, but I didn't mind it here. So going off of that it felt kind of Star Warsy, and that this film was very much a sci-fi Marvel movie. The Quantum Realm, right? This entire film pretty much takes place in the Quantum Realm. And with that came a lot of interesting things, right? We had a lot of interesting characters, I think that they did a great job in setting up the world. I do feel that like, if for most movie audiences that don't necessarily know what the Quantum Realm is, like going into it, I'd already kind of figured, all right, things are going to be weird. The Quantum Realm is all over the place. I had an understanding of it, but I feel like a lot of normal moviegoers that aren't so steeped in the comics are going to be like, what the heck am I watching? So I feel like for some people, it's going to be a stretch to believe the entire environment and a lot of the things, which, okay, I just remembered another thing. But yeah, so the Quantum Realm thing, I didn't mind it. I thought it was pretty cool. But I feel like some people are going to walk into it and walk out being like, I don't know what that was. Marvel's trying too hard now. Like, what is this? Take me back to just, New York being attacked, which some people are actually the opposite. Why is it always New York? Let's go somewhere else. So you can never please everyone, right? But going on to another thing that I actually fall right in the middle. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it, was Modok. We get Modok in here. Now, having played the recent Marvel's Avengers game where Modok is used, Dr. Tarleton, and that version of him, this was a completely different version. We got Darren Cross as Modok, and I cannot be mad at what they did with him, because they brought in Modok, made him pretty much look like the comic version for the most part. They had the big, like stretched out, like fat face and the tiny legs and the tiny arms. And they did Modok and they made it work. Now, were there some instances where you're like, all right, well, this is ridiculous, or like, all right, well, this is kind of silly. I can't be mad, because it didn't bother me to the point of like Thor Love and Thunder, right? Where like, now you're just being goofy to be goofy and it doesn't really add much to the story. Now, to counter my own point, you could take Modok completely out of the story and still be fine, but I didn't hate the character, which is very surprising for me, because I'm usually more of like, hey, I like my movies to have like those serious moments. I like more grounded films, not just like we're just being funny to be funny. But this did a great job of balancing that, because yes, Modok was a silly character, but I feel like it was funny enough and not too unnecessarily goofy that it fit in the story. And obviously, being in the quantum realm, what a better place to have Modok than in the quantum realm. I'd rather have him there and it make a little more sense than to have him like floating around New York City and trying to chase the Avengers. So I wasn't mad about it, but I feel like you could take him out of the movie and you're fine. Maybe you save some time. But you get rid of a character there. Yes, we see MODOK die, and I think he's dead for good. I don't think they're gonna bring him back. I think that was more of like a hey, he's a very well known character to the people who read the comics. Here he is, and now he's gone. So those were pretty much my thoughts on that. I don't think I'm forgetting much. I thought Hank and Michelle Pfeiffer's character, Janet. I thought it was interesting the way that they used her. I kind of like the story of how she met Kang and helped him, and so I was pretty fine with that. I don't obviously you could poke a few plot holes in like, well, how did they get all the materials to build this, and how did they get there? Like, you can poke plot holes into pretty much any movie, but I didn't have any issues with it. Overall, I thought the story was actually very well written. Some of the action scenes were very thrilling. I think that they did a good job of, the fighting scenes. The fact that we get a fist fight between Ant Man and Kang at the end, I thought was pretty awesome, because yes, you got Kang, and by the way, how badass did he look when he was shooting those lasers and incinerating people? Like, that was really cool. I like that at the end it came down to a fist fight, and that line by Paul Rudd, like, I don't have to win, we just both have to lose. Ooh, so good. I do once again feel like I can nitpick the ending, because it's like, oh, so we just defeated him that quick? I thought Kang was like the conqueror and some badass, but anyways. And so, yeah, the last thing I want to get into is the two end credit scenes. They're both revolve around Kang. And what can I say about them? The first one I thought was really interesting, because we get this end credit scene where you got all these versions of Kang and they're gathering, and it looks like they're like in some sort of coliseum, right? This is clearly a nod to the comics and the Council of Kangs. Now, I'm not too familiar with that storyline. I know about the Council of Kangs. I don't necessarily know if there are any that stand out from it other than the one main big bad Kang. I'm interested to see where they're going to take it. They showed us obviously quite a bit of these variants and how they differ, and the Egyptian one looks pretty cool. But now this makes me think like, okay, I think now that this Kang, because at first when Kang got sucked into like that quantum, that multiversal engine, I thought, okay, well, he's trapped in there and he's going to come out and he's going to be pissed off. He's going to be more mad than ever, and he's going to come after the Avengers. But now I'm thinking he might actually be dead, and that wasn't even the worst Kang. Like, that was once again another tease at what Kang could be, and that there's an even worse Kang out there, and that's going to be the one from Kang Dynasty. Or my other theory, I mean, it's not really a theory, but just something I'm thinking about now is like, maybe the Kang Dynasty Avengers movie and maybe the rest of these, Phase 5 movies are not going to be about one big bad. Maybe each movie they're fighting a different Kang. How crazy would that be? Like, all right, we had Thanos, we had one big bad, we built up to it, but here we're not going to do that. We're going to have different versions of these guys be fought by different teams, different heroes, and then maybe the last one, or maybe the Avengers film is just like a bunch of Kangs. I don't know, but I feel like they can do a lot of things here. So that first end credit scene, I think was pretty pivotal, because I think it tells us a lot about where Kang's character could go. Because I do think that Kang that Ant-Man fought is now dead, based off of what that Kang said. Like, I wouldn't have called you if he really wasn't dead. Or they could just be misleading us. But the second post-credit scene, oh my god, how cool was it to see Loki, to see Tom Hiddleston's Loki appear again, and to see Owen Wilson appear again as well. That was so much fun. I can't wait for Loki season 2. To this day, Loki is still my number one favorite Marvel Disney Plus show, and I'm excited to see those two back together. It looks like we're visiting the original, well, a variant of Kang, but during his origins, when he was first starting out and first studying time. So I'm excited to see. I think Loki's really gonna tie a lot of these, weave a lot of these shows and movies together. So I'm very excited for that. Yeah, guys, just to kind of wrap things up here, I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was super fun. Was it the big spectacle that we were kind of led to believe it was? No, I think that in that sense it was a disappointment. But seeing Cassie and Scott, further that relationship and seeing two giant Ant-Man or Ant people, I guess, Cassie, I hope they call her stature like they do in the comics. So to see both of them giant and like just the different things that they did with the Ant-Man powers, I thought was really cool too. So I had a really good time, guys. I've seen it twice. I'm going to go see it again with the family. I'm happy that this is like, okay, I feel like we're back in it. We're back into like Marvel, like this Marvel. Shang-Chi was also very fun as well. So like no more of this Thor Love and Thunder, like, Multiverse of Madness. I'm good. Let's stick with the formula, but just build up to something. I think I'm glad that we're kind of back to that. I do recommend obviously going out to check this out. I feel like if you're watching this video, you've already seen it. So yeah, guys, that's all I have for you. This has been the real breakdown of Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for what's next to come on the real breakdown.